Okay, so how the armor is built. There are various, many actually, instances when armor can build, and it comes from all sorts of sources. Sometimes it will come through an experience, well, actually always will come through an experience we have, but the experience can be physical, experience can be emotional, experience can be mental. As we said before, armor is really a way of protecting ourselves against whatever happened in our lives that we couldn't deal with at the time. And body creates a protection around your sane, sensitive, healthy self to protect itself. So actually armor is useful at the time it's built. Because if we didn't create armor, if we didn't create that safety around the traumatic experience, our nervous system, our psyche would literally explode. We couldn't take it. So it's a healthy thing. However, if the armor is not released, then it will stay in the body, and then we recognize it as unhealthy armor, or something that is kind of stopping us living fully, stopping us being fully expressed, fully alive. And then levels of armor, some are easier to identify and some are more difficult to identify. For example, psychological, or if you like, mental armor is behavioral patterns. It's way we learned how to navigate through life so that we stay sane, so we stay healthy, and then we create behavioral patterns. So these ones you can actually notice in the way you communicate with your friends, in the way you communicate with anybody in your life, the way you conduct yourself as a person will have a personality. That personality, or in this case, the whole kind of personality is also reflected in the emotional body and the physical body as well. So then we have type of personality that will have a certain body type, will have a certain muscular structure that builds around that particular personality or that particular mental construct. The other part of the armor is then emotional armor, which comes from, let's call it, being attacked. So your sensitive, healthy, open self receives from outside, receives some kind of an impulse, something that kind of shocks you. Emotional body will go into armor, will create armor. On a physical level, this will all reflect on a physical level, but physical armor, for example, could be, actually, I had it from extended periods of the same exercise. So what happened in my case, for example, as a boy, I spent 4 years roller skating. And I didn't wear shoes, I just wore roller skates for 4 years because I liked it. However, what I did, it built my muscles around my legs, hip, back, and bum in such a way that actually became armor. So when I stopped doing it, my movement was restricted. My body physically couldn't move in certain ways because the muscle was built to support one particular exercise. And you have it with bikers, with anybody who does sport in kind of consistent, one type of muscle group works too much, it actually creates armor because it stops you from fluidity, it stops you from being fluid in other type of activity in life. Sanna, do you have anything to add before I move on?
Yeah.
Go for
it. Yes to all of that. And if we think that everything is energy, as we know, and every time we expose ourselves for a kind of stressful or traumatic or challenging situation, maybe it is as a child, something is happening and we're not able to cope with this intense experience, and it might not even be a super intense experience, but for that child in that moment, it's an intense experience. It can be, you know, "Mama, I'm hungry," you know, the child is screaming and wants attention, and the mother doesn't come, you know, and it creates an armor of abandonment, for example. And for the baby in that moment to be able to cope with that, it stores this experience somewhere in the body. So the energy which is created but not released will get entangled in the body. And the thing is with armor is that it's not really logical always where it's stored in the body. So this energy can be stored in the arm, in the belly, in the butt, in the throat. It can be stored in different ways. But so this is how armor are shaped. All this experience that we are not being able to cope with in the moment, that form of energy gets stored and into another body part. And it can be on an actual, like Diane said, psychological level. It can be on an actual physical level. So we can track and pinpoint these armor in the body. And this is a lot of what we work with in the training. What else to say with that? Yeah, and how to track this in the body is that you can, it can feel as a vibration. It can be a numbness. It can be a vibration. It can be a numbness, contraction. It can be pain. You have different forms of physical, tangible dots. It's very tangible. It can be very tangible. And sometimes working with this armor, sometimes memories comes up and sometimes not, but most of the time there is a form of emotion stored inside. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
We also don't have to get stuck on the emotion, because not always, armor is not always emotional when it releases. It can be, like Sanna says, it can be just release of energy. It can be release of pent up, like it doesn't have the emotion, but it has a feeling of energy running, releasing, just around that.
Yeah, definitely. And also why it's so important, because how all this armor through our lives, like Diane said, it creates a protection for us. We have been able to cope in this reality, in this world, for different reasons, but it comes to a point where it doesn't serve us anymore. And then we want to break the habit of being ourselves, to be able to be truly ourselves. And this we do through de-armouring, by breaking our behavior patterns, by breaking the patterns in the body, which we do through the breathing, which we do through conscious explorations of our minds and our programmings, which we do through physical release of the body, so we can realign into a healthy flow of life force energy in our body, so we can think clear. Is that resonating with you? Yeah.
I want to pick up on what Peter asked. He's saying, is the body armor a byproduct of the human will for the benefit of survival? This is exactly what we were saying.
Yeah.
So it's a most natural response. Say, for example, something happens that frightens you or something. Initial body reaction is to contract. So we have a fight or flight. This is all healthy. Armor is designed to protect us for a good reason, because psyche needs to remain healthy. Like the core of you needs to remain healthy, and body has various ways of coping with it, or creating situations within your system that keeps you sane, that keeps you on track, that keeps you able to, or at least, like, very often what happens is armor will create itself around your precious little pure self, and it will wait for decades until you're strong enough to actually deal with it. And then it will start opening up. And so this is then we see, like, all of us are working on ourselves, and every now and then something pops up, comes as if from nowhere, and now it wants to be looked at. And very often we hear people saying, also in my experience, that, oh, I thought I dealt with this issue, and then hope it comes again. So armor is always healthy. What is not healthy is not dealing with it and releasing it in due time. This is what's not healthy. But even this actually, yes, Anna.
No, I want to pick up on that, but continue.
Yeah, go.
Yeah. Because most, if we continue to live our lives with this armor, it will just manifest larger and larger and larger in our body, and we will filter this out in our experience. We will actually always live filtered by the past more than actually aligned in the now, in the present moment. So we will keep, that's why we keep on repeating all this pattern in relationships with our boss, with our mother and father, because we are constantly filtered by this armor stored in our body. So it's really where we take self-responsibility to, like, fuck this, I'm done, I really want to break these patterns of my life. I want to create another version. I want to live more healthy. I want to live more in alignment. I don't want to keep on repeating these patterns. And if we do not release this in our actual physical body, or don't go to the core, we will keep on repeating it. That's why in psychotherapy you can understand and talk through things on a mental level, which is super important also. But if it's still stored in the body, it's still stored in the body. You will still have that vibration, that frequency that filters your everyday experience. That's how, simple but very complex it is.
And one of the things that's really interesting to observe here is the habit. We people are kind of inert and creatures of habit. So let's say if you could stay in a childlike state and traumatic experience happens, children are not habitual yet. And so for them, it's much easier to release, much easier to let go and return to normal. The longer the armor, or the longer this concept of contraction stays in the body, the more years that pass by, the habit gets stronger, and then it's harder to break it down. And so this is what we're saying, is that basically armor in itself is healthy. What is unhealthy is succumbing to habitual, oh, well, this is how I am, I can't do nothing about it. And you live with it, and then you learn to live with armor, and you learn to live with certain body postures and certain aspects of yourself that you think you can't do nothing about, because you've forgotten that actually you can. But because of habit, because of many, many years of doing it, it feels like it's always been like this. So a big part of de-armouring is actually learning, relearning, remembering what it felt like to be supple, what it felt like to be conductive, what it felt like not to be habitual too much. I mean, some habits are good, but being stuck in it. So basically armor is, if you like, when armor builds, first it starts as a soft contraction because something contracted. When the traumatic experience released or went, you should be able to release. Should you have the courage to actually do it at the time. If you don't, the contraction stays and stays and stays. I mean, you can also see it with, like when you do physical exercise. Yeah, that's it. It gets more and more dense, only because it hadn't been looked at, and the habit of life takes over. And so this is the mechanism that armor builds, actually, is with habit and with time. We assume new ways of moving, new ways of being, new ways of relating to the world, not remembering that actually all you have to do is just look at it again and release it. Okay.
I'm going to say, so Cyprian,
yeah, go for it.
Will we form an armor all our life, no matter how many times we will release it? That's a great question. So armor will continuously, we will be exposed for armor, every kind of, or many situations, life happens, life is life. Life will not, until you're like fully enlightened, be a piece of cake. I doubt even then that it won't be challenges. So armor is created by this form of challenges. And maybe in your life there will be another traumatic experience and a new armor will come up. The thing is, the more conscious we become, the more we work with our body, the easier it will become to deal with it. So instead of, let's say you're in a situation where you normally would, shut down and cramp, you can, you just choose to release into that situation, to relax and release into that situation. Of course, that depends on what kind of situation. But yes, armor can keep on forming through our lives. But that's why it's also important to learn the tools to maintain and clean up the body. So both me and Dian, for example, and we are constantly and consciously working with our bodies and receiving sessions to stay clean and healthy. It's like any muscle can get tensed. We need to maintain the health. But it doesn't mean that the same armor will repeatedly come up. That it can, one form of armor can take longer time to release. It can take many sessions. Maybe we haven't learned the lesson that this specific armor comes with, for example, and it keeps on showing up. It keeps on showing up. Maybe we are so addicted to the chemical response of this specific armor that we don't know how to release from it, because we are habitual people. So even if it doesn't really serve us, we stay attached to the actual chemical response in the body. So it's so many different levels to look at how and when we are ready to release an armor. Because sometimes some armor is also, sometimes we're not ready. We're like, I'm going to fight this too. I'm going to release it. I'm going to blow up now before New Year's, I'm enlightened. and sometimes lesson is not learned, lesson is not learned. But to answer the questions, yes, we can keep on form armor, but less and less and less the more conscious we become.
Robert has asked a question, if the armor was created pre-language, so when children are too small to talk, is it then the talk therapy is useless or no good because the mind is translating pre-verbal experiences and reinforcing it? So basically, yes and no. Armor is, in this case, the armor was created before you could talk, but it's all to do with understanding the experience that you went through and making peace with it. So in reparenting and also in mama-papa therapy, we always work on a pre-talking time. But it's also good enough to, if the talk therapist knows how to take you into the experience, then with a logical mind, grown-up mind, you can actually go into the experience when you couldn't talk and still make sense out of it. So actually, no, it's not true. The reason, the reason talk therapy is not so effective is because from habits, the mind is set to run, they're like trains, thought trains that are alight, and everything else is kind of not easy to get into. And with talk therapy, sometimes it's very difficult to break that mental pattern, to actually go into the areas of brain, or if you like, neural pathways, which you haven't seen for a long time because they're not so easily accessible. That's why the talk therapy actually is not so effective. It's much easier to actually directly touch the body because then you're directly touching the experience, and then the neurotransmitters actually come alive again, and the connection, the mental connection happens. Does it answer it, Robert?
Yeah, and it is not always. I'm going to read it through again. So physical reason or emotional reason.
Robert, did that answer your question?
Yeah. It makes sense because it's complicated, But my sense of it is when I've experienced stuff that came back from that time when we were doing the armoring work, it was almost like I was observing it separate, and I was realizing it was from a younger me that didn't have any words, and it seemed like just the energetic release at that level was what was effective.
Yeah.
And
I didn't really need the words to
no.
And it was kind of like I moved on energetically, but then if I keep talking about it, it seems like it brings it like hooks it back in.
Yeah, you're feeding it. If you think about everything is energy, and you have this thing, and you're like giving it energy, and it's just like, you pay attention to it, so it becomes larger. So that's why it's also, there is not, sometimes when we get too much into the cognitive brain around these things, it just takes longer and longer and longer to release it, because we build all these stories, and then we build stories, and then we build stories around that and that and that, instead of just trusting the body.
Well, that's kind of my sense of it. It almost seems like the talking about it is keeping it in existence at a certain point.
Yes and no, Robert, hang on a second. Yes and no. It depends how deeply you penetrate your mind with the questions or with the talk therapy. It also, it's the same with like difference between massage and de-armouring. If I just massage my arm, I will not get deep enough. But so you need to kind of go deeper into the body. The same thing you need to do with the mind. If you have a talk therapy, you need to go deeper inside. You need to ask questions and drill and drill and drill and drill and drill. Yes, Anna.
Yeah, and but the thing is, it requires a sensitive mind, because our cognitive brain, it vibrates, our thoughts vibrates on a more dense level, which hinders us to come in contact with the subtle energies of the emotions stored in our body. So that's why what Dean says, you really need to pinpoint and feel. Because if you're just like talking on an, like as I say it, I can feel on an energetic level, it's very flat. You don't come like really anywhere. You're just like walking around in a circle. But the right question and feel it, like go into a contemplation instead. Like, how come, ask yourself, activate those parts of the brain that becomes curious about the sensation in the body, rather than to analyze and think in a linear way. What if this is da-da-da-da? So how come, and where can that be stored? Show me. So you have such a great intelligence in the body. Use it, But if we're used to live on a cognitive level a lot and think, then it takes a little time to get used to feel the subtle vibrations in the body. Yeah. But it's really like establishing a friendship. Okay, so I'm committed to get to know myself deeper and get to know the universe on a deeper level, to get to know my spirit on a deeper level. So like, show me. Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is it's a combination.
Yeah.
And that if I'm only working mentally, I'm not getting there. But if I'm not working with mental at all, then I'm not really able to transform it completely.
I can't say that, because it depends on what armour and what is the situation. Yeah. So sometimes, I have had pre-birth experiences where I was in my womb and I did rebirthing, and it was just like terrible. I had a terrible birth. I was the most unloved child on the planet when I got born, and it was horrifying to get in contact with that. But I had no words. I didn't need to say anything, but the feeling in my whole body was terrible. Yeah. And I didn't know, no words needed, like no words, but feeling through this experience. So it all depends on the armour itself. There is not like a step-by-step process really. That's the mastery of this technique, I would say, but it's not even a technique.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
All right, Rob, we're gonna mute you now. Mute Robert. Okay, do you have any more questions on this, what we talked so far? So this becomes super clear to you, and then we can move on to the second part of the webinar, which is actually how to work with it and
how we can track it.
Yeah, and how to release it. Yeah.
How we can feel it. I mean,
anything that we talked about for this last half hour. Anybody has a question, please raise your hand, and we can unmute you.
Marcus.
Who?
Wait, I'm just reading. Mark, are there particular reasons why the armour stays in the body and not released after the trauma has happened and passed? Why the reason why the armour stays in the body? Because it's undealt with. So, or are you thinking why, if we keep on working on the same armour, it doesn't disappear? Can you unmute Marco one time?
Marco, let me find you. Raise and there you are. Unmute. Go for it, bro.
So I think we covered that if we don't work through it, then it will stay stuck. Mm-hmm. Is that the answer of your question, or how can I elaborate on that more?
Yeah, I think what I mean is like a trauma as the trauma happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't always stay in the body. So what's the biggest reason that it stays, and what's the biggest reason that it not stays after the trauma has happened?
I guess that we could deal with it in a easier or less easy way in that moment.
No, but what's the particular reason that it stays behind?
That it stays behind is that we protect ourselves. and then we couldn't release it, we couldn't deal with the intense feelings in the body in that moment. We couldn't deal with it. So that's why it's like one experience can be massive for somebody, while for another person it's like whatever, you know. It's like it's very individual why armor stores or trauma stores in the body and not. So
does it answer it, Marco, or are you still unclear?
That's good.
Oh, great. So we will have more questions and answer in the end. Also, let me see here. Marco is still there. How can you
no, it's stuck in your body.
How can you know it's stuck in the body? Okay. We can actually go. It kind of leads into the next.
Yes, it does. Shall we then carry on with that?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
so,
Mari.
How do you know that armor is stuck in your body? This also applies to how do you know armor is stuck in your head, in your psychological part of self. It's like this. Every time you try to relax a part of your body, like for example, I'm going to turn the camera a little bit down so you can see what I'm doing. So say I have my arm here and the muscles that run along the arm here. If I just run my finger on it, it kind of goes soft, 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 and then clack, something is hard. There is like a string of muscle that I cannot relax. Try to do it on yourself now. I mean, for those who have done it before, you don't have to, but for those who don't know what I'm talking about, prod your arm, or actually any part of the body, chest, shoulders, leg, wherever you are, just see if you can find, just like run your finger through it, like left and right, and then see if you can find a muscle that is tight. And then once you find it, keep your finger on it and try to relax it. Like do everything you humanly can, like relax your arm, put it in a position that is most relaxed so you don't have to use any muscle to hold it in place, and really try to relax that muscle and see if you can do it. And the answer is no, you can't. So that's armor. Do you see what I'm heading at? Any muscle, how do you know or how do you identify it? Is anything in your life that you cannot shift and transform at will like this is armor. Whether this be, in this case, muscular tension, which anything I try to do, and my arm is as relaxed as it can be, and yet the tension is still there. Would it be a psychological armor that you have a dynamic, say, for example, between your parents and you, and there is some kind of in the space, and you just can't be with them, and no matter how much you try to talk to them, no matter how much you try to be accommodating and blah blah blah, there is still tension between you. It's armor. So this is how you know. Armor is always something that at will and at like drop of the coin you cannot shift. Yeah.
Can I pick up on that, which is interesting, how we then start to track this armor in our body. So when we start to fine-tune our consciousness, our consciousness is always fine-tuned, but when we start to fine-tune the mind more, and when we come in contact with these experiences that creates a trigger, let's say you're in the situation with your mom and dad and you feel this, it's like, okay, I've done all what I can, I've been breathing through it. It's like I go out, I'm gonna do a hand scream, I'm shaking, I take a break, I say pause, whatever, and I still feel this intense tension. What you want to do is to get familiar. How does this vibration, the irritation, how does it feel in your body? What is the specific energetic of this, now in this case, irritation in the body? And where can I track it in my body? Is there a place in my body where I feel this? So then you can also track the energy where it's located in your body on a very conscious way. So the more we get familiar with this vibration, so when it comes to more psychological armor, the more we can get in contact with the vibration of this armor, the easier it is to track it in our body. This is quite high level. I mean, it's a quite advanced experience, but it opens up to a new reality to start to master your experience instead of reinforcing the armor. You then, okay, I feel this irritation. Whew, what is the, okay, I feel this bubbly energy. Maybe it's heat, maybe it's cold. And where does it come from? Where do I feel it? Where is my body contracting when I feel this energy? And the more you can then, in that moment, just, I mean, it's not just, because it's simple, but it's not easy. The more you can feel it, the more you can do self-de-armour in that moment.
Basically, right? What we are saying here is that the process of de-armouring is a combination of, first, you need to become aware that you have armor. There is an aspect of your life that no matter what you try to do, at least so far, it stays the same. And it's pissing you off, and it doesn't work, and it's kind of disrupting your life, and it's stopping you living fully and effortlessly and with freedom and ease. So this is the first step. First, you need to witness it. You need to see it. You need to acknowledge it's there. You might not be able to do anything about it, but at least you know that this part of your life is unchangeable, and it's so fucking frustrating, and it doesn't work. So this is the first thing. So this, actually, having someone doing de-armouring for you, like a practitioner, helps that, because they will locate it in your body for you. They will highlight it for you, and they will kind of not force you, but they will make it very clear that this is where it is, and you need to work on it. When you're de-armouring yourself, which this session is about, when you're self-de-armouring, you need to become, what Sanna says, it's an advanced level of self-observation, self-knowledge, and working with yourself in a way that is so brutally honest with yourself. There are no excuses. You cannot excuse anything, because basically at the end of the day, you created the armor. Nobody put it inside the system. It was your choice, it was your doing, and it will be your undoing. So that's the first level you need to understand. So if you want to self-de-armor instead of going to a practitioner, you really need to develop a muscle of being brutally honest with yourself. So that's it. So that's the first step. You witness it. Okay, for example, here, I'm armored. I can see that no matter what I try to do, physically, consciously, right now, I cannot relax this muscle. Then you start observing it, and you start watching it, and you start seeing what you don't have in your life as a result of having this armor. So, for example, example with the mom and dad, it's Christmas time, we're all with the families, and you see that no matter what you do, your relationship with your parents is not going well. What am I missing out? Because I'm creating it. So I'm the master of my own destiny, and I'm creating a shitty relationship with my parents, or I'm creating this muscular tension here, which stops me moving my wrist in a way that I'd like to move. So what are you missing out on? So this is the second step. First, you observe it, you witness it is there. Second step is, okay. And then comes, so the development of that is kind of, is going to ask you to be brutally honest. It's going to ask you to be very, very precise and very, almost like a surgeon. And then answering the questions like, how long am I willing to live with this? Like, brew on it, give yourself time. This is a feminine practice of, in a soft way, accepting that you need to melt, you need to transform, you need to shift.
It's a commitment, yeah.
Yeah, but the reason I say, sorry, Sanna, the reason I say soft and feminine is because there is also a masculine way. The ego needs to be bashed, I need to be hardened, I need to kill it, I need to get my ego and fucking...
Who says that?
This is exactly, this is exactly the thing as having a little child and being a brutal parent. Like, you want to teach your child, and then you start smacking it around and hitting it around because they need to learn. This will not work. This will just create more hassle. It's much, much more fluid and much more successful and much more humane to be soft and gentle and to see, okay, well, the fact is that I created this armor. The fact is that I'm still holding it. And because I'm holding it, I miss out on love, I miss out on flexibility, I miss out on good relating, I miss out on money, I miss out on physical agility, I miss out on health, all these things that you're suffering from as a result of you creating this armor and holding it inside your body. By this point, you're reaching a boiling point where you had enough. Like, your conscious, cognitive, grown-up part of yourself is saying, you know what, I'm not up for this anymore. Yes, I know I created it, and I'm losing so much in my life that I'm not prepared to waste another day or another second in that state. I want to transform it. And so this gives you a courage and gives you impetus, gives you a push to actually start going into it, because what you're going to go into is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be unknown. It's going to be potentially painful. It's going to be very intense sometimes. So you need to have courage and determination to actually go through it. Otherwise, at the first sight of, oh, that hurts, you're going to stop, and they're going to get distracted with another cup of coffee or conversation, and you're not going to de-armor yourself. Yeah. So, Sanna, just actually, go for it.
So I want to add on to this on a purely like neurological and level when it comes to the feminine and masculine response to armor as well. So if we choose, armor is the form of a stress response in the body. And so it activates our fight and flight system, which creates tension, which creates more density, which creates, it's a denser vibration energy. It's a denser energy in the body. So what we want to do on a purely physiological and neurological level is to relax into. We want to activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the form of a feminine response. It's and it's an acceptance. So when we are in these moments, this can help the logical mind to understand what's actually happening in the body. So when we are in these moments where we feel this stress response in the body, it's like, okay, I know this is my fight and flight system creating a chemical response in my body. It creates a defense mechanism. It creates harshness. It creates separation. It creates towards you, etc. And then instead, okay, I'm more committed to love. I'm more committed to the finer vibration. I'm more committed to joy. I'm more committed to connection, because this is what the parasympathetic nervous system does in our body. It naturally creates connection with people. So this is why meditation is so utterly good, because it activates our parasympathetic nervous system, and then we won't react as much as we would do without. We won't react as much as if we would run from a fight and flight system. If you look at our society today, most of us are running around in the fight and flight. We are planning, we are ahead, we are thinking survival, money, career, it's children. It's a constant survival mechanism. We live to survive rather than live to live. And this is what it does. So the more we can come into the parasympathetic nervous system and understand that this is how we also de-armor ourselves, the more of a beautiful life we will have. And it's really, really fascinating. Then it becomes quite easy to understand, and easier and more motivating to do this work as well. It doesn't feel so far out.
Can we carry on? I'm just conscious of time a little bit. We have 15
please.
minutes left. So Ulrika asked the question, so how to de-armor in that moment, even fully feeling it, in my experience, they're stuck in there, in my body. So this is now we come,
Yeah, continue.
So now we come into the juice of this session. Every time I self-de-armor, I need to, first of all, you need to have space. You need to have time. This is not going to happen in a second. Yes, you get better, and I got much better at releasing it. At the beginning, it would take an hour. Now it can take 5 minutes. Basically, you need to find a space where you can be on your own. And if you're working on a physical side, then you're going to literally go through your body, and you're going to, as Sanna said before, you're going to ask yourself, where in my body do I feel armor is located? So you recognize a particular bit of your armor and you want to work on it. First question is, where can I feel it? Because it really helps to put a finger on it. So say in this case, I'm just going to get up a little bit, maybe go a little bit further. So say I'm working on my heart. I'm going to put my finger on it. All of my attention, all of my awareness, consciousness is going underneath my finger into where I'm touching. And I'm going to start slowing down my breath and putting the breath and the consciousness and awareness into the very point which hurts under my finger. I'm going to do a series of conscious relaxations which are going to carry on for the duration of the session. I want to continually keep relaxing the rest of my body, because it will happen that I press it here and suddenly my shoulders start getting like this, tight, because it's like hard work and I don't want to go in there because it's going to be uncomfortable. So it has to be one part of your brain, the conscious adult part of your brain, always needs to be in charge of keep on relaxing, keep on releasing, keep on breathing. So it's like that part is going to be my therapist, while the other part of my brain can actually go into the experience and start feeling, and whatever is feeling, sensing of whatever is happening under my finger. The key here for me is to slow down and to allow myself time to feel what is under my finger. The reason I need to go so slow is because the connection between the process of what I'm doing right now is making a bridge, making a conscious bridge between subconscious armor, which is there, and I can feel it, and my consciousness. I need to make that bridge, the neural connections, the neural pathways, which I've avoided for, say, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it doesn't matter, avoiding this particular armor. I need to now create a conscious bridge, and this will take time. It can take seconds if you are extremely fast and very, very sharp, but usually minutes, half an hour, of giving myself time to really feel. And then first I feel the physical sensation, how it feels in the body. And then I'll give it some time, minutes, seconds, to actually connect to the emotional side of the feeling. What does that emotionally feel like? But this is a little bit of a longer wave. As this happens, I might start getting reactions, because basically all armor needs is witnessing. When the armor is witnessed with love and acceptance, this is what melts it. Understanding, love, and acceptance, that really has to be there. Because that's really that's what we do as practitioners. Your client comes in, all you do is create a safe space of love, acceptance, allowance, and the armor just goes whoof. So I need to create the same conditions for myself, because now I'm my own therapist. I need to give myself time, and I need to create a space where my inner child starts trusting its life and my adult self, that my adult self is aware enough, attuned enough, committed enough, loving enough to actually open to myself. So this is why it takes time. Sometimes, like as I said, because I got very good at it, I can do it sometimes quicker, but like actually like right now what's happening is because I'm holding my own heart and this particular point has charge. Like even when I'm talking to you, because I gave myself time and I didn't move the finger, and as I'm talking to you, I'm feeling and tuning in on what I'm doing, I began de-armouring myself. It is so simple. There is no brain surgery, kind of brain needed for this. All you have to do is become a parent to the point that you're working on. Surrounded with love, surrounded with feminine softness, create conditions. It's like gardening. Create perfect conditions for the little sprout of this pain to actually be bold enough, to be brave enough to come to the surface. That's all you have to do. And this is why it takes time. So you cannot, okay, I'm going to release now. So it wouldn't work if I go like this. I go here, put here, and now I'm going to relax it, and I'm going to de-armour it, and now you'll see in a few minutes you're going to be de-armoured. No, nothing will happen. There is no love, there is no understanding, there is no mother-father energy present to it. nothing will happen. My pain body will not open because it doesn't feel safe. Yes, my physical body might enjoy it because it will be like a nice little massage, but the deep armor won't shift. So give yourself time. Find the point on the body that you want to armor, the armor, and feel it, sense it. Slow down. Start breathing. Every time the breath is the key. Every time you find your breath starts getting stuck or you're breathing controlled, like stop it. You need to enter into the flow, enter into the fluidity of your body. Your rhythm of breathing will change. Your heartbeat will change. Allow it all. This is all part of energetics of the body, getting ready and then releasing. So minimum control, maximum love, maximum understanding, softness, and becoming a parent to that part of yourself. This is it. This really is it. This is, at least this is how I do it. And it's extremely effective. There are many areas in the body that you can work on yourself. There are some that you won't be able to. And then you need to go to a practitioner. But there is much stuff that you can do. Okay, I'm going to stop at this point. Sanna, do you have any?
Yeah, that's one great tool that I also love to use, where I just place my finger, and sometimes we can feel if we have pent up sadness. I used to have a lot of sadness in my throat and in my solar plexus, and then I could just lay and I put a finger on this specific point and breathing into it, allowing it space and nourishment, then I would release, and I would empty. So these are great ways, and as Deanne said, it can be stored anywhere in the body. And I really encourage you to play with yourself, like if you're on a bus or you're watching TV or in bed, or you can just, like, I often sit and I squeeze myself to find parts or tensions or to get to know the connections in my body more.
I'm always doing it.
Yeah, so this is a great way. Like, this is how I learned a lot about bodies, because I work on myself a lot, and I believe same with Deanne.
Like right now, as I'm talking to her, I'm playing with my foot. It's always happening. One of my hands is always prodding in something.
So get familiar to, like, also if we are not used to work with bodies, to get familiar with touching and feeling the connections, and like, okay, this muscle can be connected with this, and here I can take a deep breath when I press here, for example. So that's one great tool. And another great tool that I'd like to share with you when it comes to activate the parasympathetic nervous system in a heartbeat, which you can do many times a day. It's a great way. We have two muscles here on the side of the throat. They're called sternocleidomastoideus, mastoideus. I think you all can feel them if you feel. It's like these two meaty muscles here. So one way of activating then the parasympathetic nervous system is to gently squeeze one of this muscle at a time. We can try it all together now if you want. So with a gentle squeeze, then you just hold it, and it will come to a point where the body is kind of self-releasing. There is no push, there is no rush, there's nothing to do. The body will tell you when it releases. And you can like experiment with the different pressure, so you don't need to squeeze it really hard, but it can still be firm. And you just hold it until the body take a deep breath. Does it work for you? Can you raise your hand if it works for you? 1, 2. Just holding it. Yeah. And just see if you can connect with the sensations in the body as the system is activated. You can maybe hold it, I don't know how you're holding it, but if you're gripping it almost in the back, so you almost have it's not just on the tip, but you're actually having almost all the muscle in your hand. It's almost that you put your fingers around it. You can't really put your fingers around it, but almost. and find the sweet spot where your body is releasing. And you can work that part all the way from up. You can have like 3 squeezes, depends on the length of your muscles. And this is an absolutely, sometimes it takes a little time before we get used to where our release point is. But this is a great way to do. You can do it as many times as you want during the day to help your body to come back into relaxation and help your body to release deeper.
Can I pick it up?
Yes.
So the other way is breathing, and I would like to give you a little homework. So I can see some of you here have been to our courses, some have not. But for all of you, the lesson of today is, how can I penetrate myself with my breath even deeper? What that means is that there are many different ways to breathe. And the normal breath is kind of, I'm going to do it like this so you can hear me. This is what I call a surface breath.
You can take down the microphone down.
Because I'm going to start breathing a little bit slower now.
Yeah.
And if you can hear it, I would like you to start practicing like this. It's becoming so soft with your breath that if you have an inhale which goes, well, when you come to here, when you inhale, I don't want to do this, I want to do this. The difference is that this is what I call penetrative breath. The breath that you kind of lose the gap between exhale and inhale. Towards the end of inhale, you slow down the force which you pull the air in, and you relax your chest muscle completely and still carry on inhaling gently. Because what that does, the energy, this is energy work. So the energy that comes with the breath, as you inhale and then slow it down, the energy goes through it. It kind of penetrates way, way, way deeper than the just physical breath. And the same on the exhale. When you exhale, you release the edges of the breath. So the breath becomes edgeless. It's like a blur between inhale, exhale. Am I inhaling and am I exhaling? Or am I exhaling or am I exhaling? The more I can relax my chest muscles and the whole torso when I breathe, the deeper the breath penetrates. It's like difference between ice and water, like a breath that I just demonstrated, like that's like ice. The water breath is so soft, it's so subtle, just penetrates every cell of your body. And this is the breath I want you to practice, because that's the breath for self-de-armouring. Yeah. Sorry, Sanna. This is the way to actually create conditions, suitable conditions within your body for the armoring to occur in the first place. So I'd like you to practice this today. Practice it, like do it maybe 5 minutes, then have a break. Then I do it all the time. When I'm driving, sometimes I do it. When I'm walking, I find it a little bit more difficult, but basically anywhere I am, I can practice it. And then when you actually come to doing the session on yourself, this is the breath that you use. This is the breath for self-de-armouring. You start with that because this is your probing tool. This is your surgical instrument that you can pull the breath into these tight, contracted areas in the body, and it kind of penetrates it. Like if you had the sand and then you put water on it, it slowly comes straight in. This is the kind of breath that does that, the edgeless, soft, endless breath. So this is your homework from me. And maybe Sanna has another homework, I don't know.
No, we don't want to put too much new things, but to do a few. I think this breath is amazing, and also if there is a body which is more in contraction and have a more difficult way of getting down into the body, it can be more helpful to get into a more powerful breath. But this is another webinar or another for another time. I think it's enough. But also to add for you who have done the training and work as a practitioners, and this subtle breath, this is when you work with the body, and this is the breath where you reach into the most delicate parts of a human soul, of this, the oldest traumas. This is the breath, because it's only then that you can come in contact, and where these parts often feel safe enough to come out. This is a very, very beautiful way of doing it. And again, to my favorite, relax and come into the parasympathetic nervous system.
Marco is asking a question: is there a technique you can use when you feel armor building up in yourself right away, like during a conversation that triggers you?
But this is
it.
This is it. Like, instead of acting on the stress response, take a deep breath in, feel the uncomfort of this response in the body, feel the energy in the body. This is where you catch it in the moment, and it's much more potent than in going back to it afterwards, because every time you go in, you compound the armor. So every time you react to a certain situation, it becomes a little bit stronger, even though it's micro. So with your logical mind, no, this is the chemical response in my body. I'm committed to love. I'm committed to stay open. So I'm going to take a deep breath, and I'm going to feel the vibration in my body, and I'm going to do my best not to judge them.
Another question was from Ulrika. She's saying there are so many different types to breathing. Do you mean not a full breath, but slow, more like very soft breath and a long breath? Okay, so this is not really about how much air you take in, because sometimes it will be full lung, sometimes it will be less. This is more about losing the edge between inhale and exhale. Yeah. It's not like it kind of slows down towards the end of either exhale or inhale, and is that tapering off. The edge needs to be completely soft, and the longer you can stretch that edge, the closer you get to what we call breath behind breath, which is where magic happens. So can I just finish that? Mm-hmm. Breath behind breath is the space where release happens. It's the space where surrender happens, because essentially you need to surrender yourself to your body, to the armor, to the sensation that you're feeling. Surrender is the key. And you can only surrender when you let go of the control. And the controlling breath is this. So you want to lose the control and go into and surrender to the breath. This is, I guess, the best I can describe it.
Yeah, and it's if you used to meditate, for example, and it can come to a point where this is automatically happen. Like it almost feels like you're stopped breathing. There is no breath anymore, and it's not the conscious yogic breath. It's not where I'm like,
no.
It's not. This is more a being as breath. There is no in and
different
out.
Purposes, but it's not that one.
No, exactly. So for this time, exactly. Practice it. You will most likely feel very relaxed and potentially come in contact with deeper, subtle vibrations in the body as you do this. It can be challenging when you do this breath, because you come in contact with deeper kind of stress responses or tensions. So your body might want to go up and get a cup of coffee or go out for a walk or start to think about the work, but just feel that vibration in the body as it comes up.
And this is where I say that you need to be gentle to yourself and work with you like you work with a child that you love. Because when the mind starts shooting off and trying to escape, which it will, the way to bring it back is with this softness. To say, hey, now I'm thinking about something else, or I really want to go and start running because this is unbearable to feel. This is where it's needed to be a soft mama, soft papa on yourself. To recognize that there is the very reason you have the armor so long is because you didn't want to look at it for a long time because it's uncomfortable. So going in there, it's not going to be just like straight, yeah, we're there. You're going to have to negotiate with yourself and slowly. And this is why this soft breath and soft attitude helps to create conditions inside yourself where you actually are willing to go in there.
Yeah. Okay. So a question from Robert: is the breath about letting the automatic breath work, or are we trying or do breathing in this way? So it's a minimal doing, if we're effortless doing. It's so when we do the breathing exercises in the training, it's like you have to put in some effort, but this is effortless, but with intentional and effortless. Does it make sense?
Oh, Robert, we need to unmute him 1 second.
So this is interesting because it's, with me, it's monkey see, monkey do. So I've done a few sessions where, because I'm experimenting, I'm starting the session by doing the Wim Hof, type breathing with the client. Yeah. So I'll take 10 minutes and I sit and lead it, when I have music for that and such. But I'm realizing, well, that's because I've seen you do that. And what I'm doing is what the child does. I'm imitating and doing that. But it makes me think that, that maybe that is not the way to do it. Maybe I need to be finding more gentle ways because I'm watching people, they're natural. I see the restriction in the chest. Yeah. They don't want to move the chest, I'm watching the armor in the body revealing it. But I'm saying, is it really helpful? Although I noticed that by the time I'm done, they've hyperventilated enough that they're relaxed. Yeah. So when I touch them, they're not, oh my God, somebody's touching me. Yeah. But I'm realizing, perhaps I've got a hammer and I use it for everything now.
Yeah. So the thing is, I pick it up here. Yeah. It's an art form, and I feel it's nothing really. Some people need something and some people need something else. So I love this form of breathing that I've been teaching you in the school. Like it's for me, it's fantastic. And it also brings, especially it really brings people into the body. And especially if there's people who are much more in their head, to ask them to do like this super gentle breathing might just not work. So and the Wim Hof breath or that type of breath is still activating the parasympathetic nervous system, and it heightens the senses and it makes them more receptive for the touch and for the armoring. So I feel you're doing absolutely right. And keep on experimenting. What happens if I end the session? This is how you learn to become the master practitioner in the way you want to work. It's like, okay, so what if I end? What if I sit by the end of the session doing 5 minutes of this type of breathing? And maybe you ask them for feedback. Maybe you do 10 minutes Wim Hof and then you do 5 minutes of this gentle breath. Explore how it works for different clients. Right. And if you feel that people are stuck in the chest, do you remember the exercise where you put your hands on the body and ask them to breathe into your hands? Yeah, I do that. Yeah. I put chest and belly. Yeah. So this is also a great way of getting them into the body. But the realization is that I'm seeing is that the people that I'm seeing oftentimes are locked where they're just not breathing. Their breath is constricted. They're walking around. You can't see what I'm doing, but they're walking around like this. Yeah. And if this doesn't move, and I try to guide them to breathe, and they're just not
not that they don't want to do it. They don't have the muscle.
No. But this is armor stored in the body. This is how we want to help them to break a pattern of habit. So I find there to do deep belly breathing to actually access. You can have them breathe into the belly, breathe into the hips, breathe into the genitals, so they kind of open and give space as much down in the legs as possible. And it takes time. And then for some people who are so contracted in their solar plexus, and so maybe they need to have a proper emotional release. Maybe the soft way won't do it in the beginning. Sometimes people need a little bit more of force to actually get in contact with what's going on. It's so many years of repression. So just feeling it, they're like, what do you mean feeling it? I don't feel a shit, but in reality there is so much pain and sadness and anger stored there, but then they might need more of Wim Hof to actually come in contact and release and express. They need more cathartic release.
Yeah, with one client, we started working. We talked in the beginning, and in that conversation, some things came out from like in the fourth session around that was telling me that there was this sexual energy that's suppressed, and then was connected to the breathing. And we started to work, and I was really focusing her on breathing into the belly. Then I had her making sounds as she was exhaling, and that became a growl. And before long, I mean, it was like anger was really coming up.
Exactly.
It was, and I was like, well, this is really interesting. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I should, like have them, make sounds when they're exhaling or guide them.
Yeah, always, and especially with this is the key. So I want to be mindful that we have just certain amount of time, and it's not really a coaching session for our practitioners. So I just want to wrap this up soon. I'm happy to create another forum for us to give you more tools. But always with the sounding, just to add on with the breath, that's why I like to do a form of breathing in the beginning, or ask them to always exhale with sound, because it will give me instant information. How comfortable are they with sounding? How much are they in the body? How deep does the breath go? How full is their breath? It gives me a lot of information just by observing them breathing and exhaling. Because most people, they're like, they can't do they're super uncomfortable with sounding. So this is great. Always encourage that movement.
Right. Yeah. That's great. I'm feeling good. I'm on the right track.
Yeah, thank you for being so enthusiastic and keen to learn, Robert. I appreciate you for that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to answer the last question, Ulrika. Sometimes the muscle in the chest is so tight that it doesn't flex anymore, and it feels like you can't even put a finger in between the ribs. Yes, very often it happens.
Is it possible for me to speak?
Yeah.
You already are.
Yeah. It's not really a question, more like an adding to the thing before that. When we meet people that are very, very contracted, sometimes they're so stiff in the cage that they can't really expand sideways when they breathe. So in that case, maybe you need to really de-armor with massage and with softening techniques. It can be really, after years of just shallow breathing, it can be so tight.
Yeah, because of the habit. Yeah, it is true. It definitely. And this also applies to any part of the body which holds armor, not just the rib cage. If, for example, if you hold armor up here, this will also be so tight that you can't penetrate it with anything. So the same principle of the de-armouring applies to the rib cage as well. Time of doing it, focus and attention onto the area that is contracted, being as soft, as feminine as possible, so that the breath and consciousness can seep as deep as it can into the tissue, and session after session. So with the de-armouring is a very fast way of releasing, but it's not magic. So if somebody was holding, say, 30 years of a strong pattern of not breathing fully in the rib cage, you can't expect in 5 minutes or one session that suddenly everything is going to be released. It's going to take a little time for them to actually 1 session, 2 sessions, 5 sessions, and then you will see some expansion,
It is very, but again, it's so individual. I find it working on the rib cage and on the heart. Like if I always work between the ribs, you know, and sometimes there's a lot of potent points in here if we work from the heart and out towards the nipples or so, and that you can actually go a little deeper and press a little harder. And if it's such a strong armor, it can be super painful. It is even if you're kind of banging with the fist on the chest point over the heart. It can be so much armor and so painful, and sometimes we need that to crack. So again, I feel there is a fine line of when to be just very, very soft, and then when put a little bit, you know, always with love and presence. But sometimes we need to do a little more pressure or a bouncing, I would say. Yeah.
Does it answer your question?
Yeah, I find it just as a therapist a bit hard with this lack of patience. With, you know, it takes time to get this armor, and it's like the society as it is, you know, we want this quick fix, and as a therapist I think it's I can get contracted in that also.
Of course.
What with frustration?
Yeah.
But I also see it that sometimes, like, this is also making a skill for practitioner. So let's say people are starting up on their journey of personal development, and they go to primal therapy, which I encourage everybody to do, which includes beating pillows, screaming, rah, dynamic meditation. It's a bit more forceful to come in contact. So sometimes we need to see who are we actually working with here. If I forever sit and and do the soft breathing, it might not release. You know, sometimes we put a little bit more pressure for people to actually come in contact. But it's a delicate line of, I've seen people being damaged also because there's so much pressure and force, and it should look like this. And I agree about the patience, of course. But again, I find it's a fine line. How can I support this specific individual? And fine tune with that, you know. Sometimes I'm wrong, and many times it works.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
We need to go.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna unmute everybody just for saying goodbyes. Unmute or boom, let there be noise.
So remember, just for wrapping this up, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
And remember the tools to feel, track the body armor, and it feels like vibration, pulsation, burning sensation, heat, cold, numbness in the body, and just feel and track and breathe into it. And these points where you can many times of the day activate your parasympathetic nervous system, and Diane's beautiful share of the soft breath. There are like 3 really, really simple and amazingly powerful tools to support you deeper into your body knowledge or people that you work with.
Okay, thank you so much everybody for coming.
Anyone want to say anything?
You too.
No,
thank you.
Okay.
For next time.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Good to see you all. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Likewise.